Our fourth and final speaker today for panel one brings an entirely new perspective to the table. Eric Dawicki currently serves as the President and CEO of the Commonwealth of Dominica International Maritime Registry, a full-service international ship registry. He is also the President and CEO of Northeast Maritime Institute and the lead delegate on government delegations to the United Nations International Maritime Organization. Eric has previously served in both the US Coast Guard Reserve and the US Merchant Marine. He has advised shipping companies, government agencies, and industry associations on regulatory trends and compliance programs. As President of the Dominica Maritime Registry, Eric is responsible for overseeing the implementation of international regulatory and legal instruments as they apply to each vessel, its owners and operators, and of course as well as to its crew. Eric, thank you very much for being here today to talk to us about these issues from the perspective of a flag state. Over to you.
Thank you, Elise. It's really a pleasure being here today, and I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, a less technical approach to the delivery of what we want to talk about here today. Essentially, we looked at four areas of discussion points, and the first is the need for the flag administration to take human rights in addition to labor rights under the MLC 2006 more seriously in the day-to-day activities to protect the mariners and their dependents. The second issue we'll talk about is the opportunity to embed such an arbitration concept in new maritime legislation to set the tone and as an act of legal leadership. The third is greater transparency in the disclosure of the handling claims of abuse by seafarers by flag states, using in fact our program that we've dealt with for the Gulf Sky as a good example. And finally, supporting the principle that human rights apply at sea as they do on land. The bottom line is I started off my career as a seafarer, as a mariner in the Coast Guard. And then at a very young age, I transitioned into the Merchant Marine and spent 6.5 years of my life at sea on tankers and really understand the principles of what it means to be a seafarer and how that applies to both the rules and regulations side, but in fact, the rights of a seafarer and mariner. Oftentimes we are left to fend for ourselves, and it is hard. Now in the position of the flag state administrator, I really have to take this very seriously. In fact, Dominica is one of the few, if only, open international ship registries that's not listed on the ITF flag of convenience rolls. And I'm very proud of that. The fact is the administration does take human rights very seriously. And MLC has taken a stand to enable us to start to foster and promulgate rules. In fact, Dominica is getting ready to ratify a whole series of rules and actually retend a national legislation that will include a very bulky promulgation of seafarer rights. And I think one of the things that we want to do is we want to look at human rights at sea. And we will certainly invite anybody to participate in the development of cogent laws and regulations as we strategize to implement a new national maritime act. I personally believe that we have the responsibility to take on the oversight to make sure that seafarers are protected. What good companies understand, what good shipping companies understand, is that compliance means money. And we're all in the business of making sure that we facilitate commerce. It was the very first thing I learned in my Coast Guard career at the age of 17. The Coast Guard's responsibility was to facilitate commerce. Ironically, I joined the Coast Guard to, in fact, engage in life-saving. And part of that protocol was making sure that life-saving saved commerce, so in fact we could go ahead and put food on people's tables. It's really important that we do that, but we need to do that in a responsible and an ethical way that probably hasn't been done before. Dominica, in fact, has a pretty solid reputation of supporting seafarer rights. Anytime we have a seafarer complaint, this administration immediately contacts the company and we go ahead and find out what the problem is. And in fact, we have a tendency to resolve it relatively quickly. So it is pretty exciting that we get the chance to talk about this in this symposium in a very strong way. The second issue is to embed such an arbitration concept in new maritime legislation to set the tone and as an act of legal leadership. The whole goal for myself is to make sure in this next transition in the Maritime Act that we are going to develop is created to include this arbitration component. So when Human Rights at Sea contacted us and started talking about some of the problems that they are realizing, we actually informed them that we are engaging in the development of a new national legislative tool. The idea that arbitration is coming up, we will go ahead and commit to all of you that Dominica will make sure that arbitration becomes a component and a tool for resolution of seafarer rights. I think it's a great idea. I think it's absolutely important as to how we are going to go ahead and facilitate human rights at sea. And I think it's very, very important that we do so in a way that is transparent and cogent. And I think the arbitration mechanism enables that while taking away some of the political influences that might steal from the opportunity to resolve a mariner's or a seafarer's rights at sea. The third issue is greater transparency in the disclosure of handling claims. I will tell you this much: as an administration, we take these claims very seriously. In fact, when we have claims, we were contacted by the folks at the Human Rights at Sea organization about a vessel called the Gulf Sky. And the Gulf Sky personnel had submitted a complaint to them, which they in fact referred to us, and we immediately started to look into the problem. The idea that we had not known about this suggests that there is a major problem, and we need more outlets and we need more transparency as an administration to enable mariners to file complaints. We have contacted the owners, we have contacted the operators, we have contacted the coastal state and the port state to engage in dialogue to resolve this issue, making sure that these seafarers are paid, making sure there's a mechanism for repatriation, and making sure there's a mechanism right now under COVID-19 that they are healthy. It is a tough situation. We went ahead and we detained the vessel. We issued a prohibition to sail immediately as soon as we found this out. And what happens when you issue a prohibition to sail, everything stops. So what we have to make sure is there's appropriate amounts of food on board, there's appropriate amounts of medical care being delivered, and there's appropriate amount of communication to and from our office, the seafarers' homes. They have the ability to communicate at home, making sure there's Wi-Fi capability. And we really did an outstanding job, and to the point where we're starting to see resolution and wages paid. And I think within about 2 or 3 weeks, we will have complete resolution. We can do that as an administration by putting some very stringent law enforcement tactics and practices on these vessels. It was said earlier in the beginning of this presentation that there is no enforcement by flag states. I'm going to tell you that's flat wrong. We have the ability to enforce, to work with other administrations, both flag states, coastal states, and port states, to engage in law enforcement practices. And in fact, we even have the capacity to apprehend a vessel at sea by creating bilateral agreements with such, in our case, with the United States. We've worked very, very closely with the United States Navy in the past, the United States Coast Guard, the United States State Department, and in fact, the United States Department of Treasury in the Office of Foreign Asset Control. We have had a great relationship with these folks. In fact, making sure that law enforcement capacity can be promulgated and promoted and realized by a small flag state. It just takes effort, it takes resolve, and it takes knowledge as to how you can do this. It's unacceptable for a flag state to ignore their responsibilities. We, in fact, are known as the flag of responsibility. When I was approached originally to develop the Commonwealth of Dominica International Ship Registry, I said no. Being a merchant mariner, being the son of a merchant mariner, being the grandson of a merchant mariner, I thought it was ridiculous. In fact, the Commandant of the Coast Guard at the time called me and he said, listen, the system doesn't go away. It's never going to go away. I want you to create something that is reliable and viable, and in fact, used as almost a think tank to demonstrate best practices. Now, we've had successes and we've had a few failures as well. But the failures have taught us how to fill the gaps. But I can tell you this much. At the end of the day, we have to take responsibility to facilitate action against these bad actors. Now, there's only a small group of bad actors out there. Most ship owners and operators are doing the right things. But this is a new mechanism that can promote even better compliance. And I think we fully support the idea of arbitration, and we want to engage in it. I think the last in the fourth concept here is supporting the idea that human rights apply at sea as they do on land. I've spent my life traveling around the world, 85 countries later, and almost every place I've been to has been as a result of some type of violation. And the idea that we have the capability of developing something new and cogent and realistic is an opportunity that doesn't come often. And that's the blessing of the Commonwealth of Dominica right now, because it is in fact managed by Northeast Maritime Institute in the College of Maritime Science. We have the ability to do studies. We have the ability to implement quickly without much regulatory haste. And we have the ability to partner with folks without any bureaucracy, really. If it's right, we're going to do it. And if it's right, we're going to engage in a responsible way. So we open up the floor to great dialogue. I've just listened to great presentations. Diane, you blew me away with your presentation. And we really want to engage, and we would like to challenge this group of people and the selected people to create a working group to develop a national strategy for the Commonwealth of Dominica to implement this protocol in its next iteration of its National Maritime Act, which we will submit to Parliament by 2021, by January of 2021. Thank you, and I truly am grateful to be allowed to participate and learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Eric.